Olá, tudo bem pessoal? Daqui é o Rui. Bem-vindos a mais um Rgames React. Desta vez com Path of Exile 2. Tenho estado atento, muito atento desde que saiu as novidades do Path of Exile 2. Um jogo ao mesmo estilo de Diablo. É um jogo espetacular que eu não joguei o primeiro jogo. O primeiro jogo, Path of Exile, está gratuito em todas as plataformas. Agora vai sair o Path of Exile 2. Trago aqui muitas informações, quer dizer, algumas informações sobre o jogo e gameplays, vídeos. Trago aqui muita coisa e é um jogo que eu com certeza vou trazer para o canal, assim espero. E traz muitas novidades, traz muita coisa e está aqui informações, não é? Mais de 10 anos depois do lançamento de Path of Exiles, o estúdio neozelandês Grinding Gear Games está cada vez mais perto de lançar o sucessor do aclamado RPG. Após uma longa caminhada, ao contrário do que seria de esperar, o estúdio não vai deixar para trás o primeiro jogo enquanto desenvolve o segundo. Abre as portas no próximo dia 6 de dezembro, ainda que em acesso antecipado, ou seja, é bom porque eles não vão deixar para trás o primeiro jogo. E vão dar aso ao segundo, que está soberbo, está espetacular a nível gráfico, a nível de gameplay parece que está delicioso, por assim dizer, não é? E estou com muita expectativa em relação ao Path of Exile 2. Aqui também diz que Path of Exile 2 foi revelado em 2019, desde então sofreu uma série de adiamentos. Pelo meio, o estúdio decidiu alterar fundamentalmente o sistema de movimento do jogo, o que exigiu um ajuste profundo de quase todos os seus elementos e teve um enorme impacto no seu gameplay. Ou seja, foi sempre um desenvolvimento constante no jogo. É o que muitas empresas fazem: lançam o produto, depois vão trabalhando o produto até ficarem melhor que elas querem, que exigem, e que deve ser para o grande público também, né? O jogo para mim este jogo deve estar soberbo. Claro que vai ter falhas, claro que vai ter erros, bugs, vai ter com certeza, mas o jogo vai estar soberbo com certeza, não é? Temos aqui mais informações acerca de Jonathan Rogers, que ele disse que eu próprio estava um pouco cético em relação a isso, em relação a conversa que teve logo após a revelação do conteúdo de acesso antecipado do Path of Exile 2. Fala aqui muito acerca das expectativas dele, da sensação do que é que eles criaram ao longo deste tempo todo, de animações, de direções, de movimentos. A falar aqui uma série de coisas que eles levaram ao longo do tempo a melhorar, né? A trazer de novo a trazer coisas mais otimizadas para o jogo. Sei lá, ele tem aqui tudo. Esta entrevista é importante, que é para perceberem mais acerca do jogo, do desenvolvimento do jogo. Fala aqui que ele foi algo certamente em grande. Tivemos de mudar muita coisa em resposta de ser possível mover e de esperar ao mesmo tempo. Tivemos que mudar praticamente todas as habilidades de longo alcance, e isso teve um impacto em todo o trabalho de classes que já tinha feito e exigiu mudanças numa enorme quantidade de coisas, como os timings e o que podemos esperar da mobilidade dos jogadores, as habilidades dos monstros e tudo o resto. Foi uma coisa em grande, mas o jogo melhorou significativamente depois disto, por isso não me arrependo nada. Ou seja, tiveram o dobro do trabalho, tiveram muito trabalho, tiveram que otimizar o trabalho em si, tiveram que otimizar muita coisa, mas foi muito melhorado, não é? Valeu a pena, tudo isso valeu a pena. Eu acho que sim, e vamos ver o resultado final, não é? Então depois ele fala aqui que quem já jogou um RPG sabe o que é muito importante: a mobilidade, que é como no Diablo, tem que se ter muita mobilidade, os tempos de ataque, tudo é muito importante. Depois as diferentes classes também vai ser uma coisa que também vai ter muitas classes. Path of Exile também vai ter muitas classes. Aqui muito conteúdo para vocês lerem, para vocês verem. E, por exemplo, aqui diz, no caso do mercenário em particular, que é uma classe, em particular com a mobilidade do tipo shooter, transformou-se completamente a sensação das bestas para uma coisa que me pareceu muito, muito boa. Depois de experimentar o mercenário, pensei, olha, isto é algo que podemos mesmo fazer, ou seja, vai meter armas, vai meter muita coisa, depende, cá está, das classes, mas vai haver muitas coisas novas, vai haver os bosses também acho que vai ser puxado, vai ser puxado os bosses. Pá, vai ser muito bom mesmo e deve ser extremamente viciante o jogo. E temos aqui a entrevista, o que é que diz aqui? Fala das diferentes classes. O que é que fala aqui mais? Se por um lado existe muitas novidades em termos de conteúdo para a Exile, hoje por outros jogadores do primeiro vão sentir-se familiarizados com muitos do seu sistema. É um jogo novo, sim, com uma aposta muito maior na ação, mas as suas raízes ainda estão bem vincadas. Isso significa que quando carregares na tecla P, vais deparar-te com a massiva árvore de habilidades passivas, que já é uma imagem de marca do Battle of Exiles. Ou ficas encantado ou absolutamente aterrorizado, não há meio termo. Neste ponto, Rogers acredita que PoE 2 é uma experiência muito mais acolhedora para os novos jogadores, mas não esperem facilidades. Viaclast continua a ser uma terra sem misericórdia, ou seja, continua difícil, é mais acessível para os novos jogadores e continua a ser, e vai ser com certeza um jogo muitíssimo bom. Mais aqui da entrevista do Rogers, o que é que temos que mais salientar? Diz aqui, a forma como usas as habilidades e uma série de outras torna-se mais fácil, de modo geral. O feedback mais recente que recebemos é que os nossos jogadores mais recentes se divertem muito mais com o Path of Exile 2 do que o Path of Exile 1. Por isso acho que fizemos muitas melhorias. Mas ao mesmo tempo nós, a um certo nível, queremos assustar. Faz parte da nossa reputação. Ou seja, é um desenvolvimento natural. O segundo estar melhor que o primeiro. Em muitos jogos não é assim, infelizmente. Mas fizeram um grande desenvolvimento, como dá para perceber do Path of Exile 1, e aquilo que nós vimos no 2 há um grande desenvolvimento. Estou com uma expectativa muito alta mesmo pessoal. O que é que ele realça mais aqui? É aqui em fazer uma build razoável, e nesse caso tu podes facilitar a entrada na profundidade de todo esse sistema. As builds é muito importante também. Conforme o que nós fazemos nas builds, o que nós fazemos vai dar aso a diferentes habilidades, a diferentes desenvolvimentos. É como o Diablo 4, pessoal. 3 atos de campanha, mais sistemas de endgame. Vai estar disponível em dezembro. Penso que é em dezembro, sim. Acho que é para o mês que vem. Vai estar disponível. Onde é que está aqui mais coisas? Uma entrevista grande que o Rogers deu. Deixa eu ver mais coisas importantes. Diz aqui acerca do endgame. A seguinte é que precisamos de chegar a um ponto onde sentimos que o endgame é viável para ser jogado durante um longo período de tempo por um grande número de jogadores, e todas as questões económicas funcionam. E também temos de nos certificar de que os sistemas são suficientemente sólidos para podermos jogar. Temos de garantir uma boa variedade de builds a esse tipo de coisa, ou seja, uma longevidade de grande jogo para manter os jogadores. Não só uma longevidade, mas também, sobretudo, também qualidade. Eles querem aliar a qualidade à longevidade para fazer disto um grande jogo, e tal e qual como há no Diablo 4, o endgame, há a continuação do jogo. Aqui também vai ter a continuação do jogo, mas eles aqui vão tentar aliar a qualidade à longevidade, que é excelente para quem adora jogar este tipo de jogos, é espetacular. Agora sim, somos uma empresa que prefere que as coisas sejam lançadas para podermos trabalhar num jogo ao vivo, em vez de trabalharmos numa coisa em segundo plano, durante muito tempo. O PoE 2 tem sido um pouco desconfortável para nós, porque estamos há muito tempo em desenvolvimento. Por isso, só o facto de termos um mínimo para ter uma boa experiência é bom. Por isso, queremos lançá-lo para podermos começar a interagir, né, com os jogadores, obter o feedback e fazer tudo isso. Ou seja, isso é muito importante. Eles querem apressar ou ter de qualidade, né, um produto de qualidade, e apressar esse desenvolvimento para ter aquele feedback com os jogadores, para melhorar. É um jogo que vai estar sempre em constante melhoramentos, e até chegar a um ponto que vai ficar, não existe jogos perfeitos, mas vai ficar aquele ponto de perfeição, aquele ponto de ser muito agradável de estar a jogar. Com certeza que vai ser. Agora é hora de deixar os jogadores veteranos redescobrir via classe, que era a de 1, e deixar as novidades para o Path of Exile 2. Para quem nunca jogou, deixo um conselho: a árvore de habilidades passiva é apenas o começo, boa sorte para o resto. Ou seja, vai ser enorme, vai ter tanta coisa, imensa coisa mesmo, pessoal. E temos aqui imagens, cá está, imagens, só uma amostra de imagens como vai ficar, e vou deixar aqui um gameplay, vou deixar aqui uns estrelas para vocês, pessoal. Vou deixar, à medida que vou sabendo de novidades de Path of Exile 2, vou trazendo aqui para o canal. Estou extremamente interessado no Path of Exile 2, mesmo, pessoal. Obrigado por vocês terem se mantido aí. Subscreva o canal. Deixe aquele like maravilhoso para o crescimento do mesmo. Atenção que isto é um canal recente e preciso muito desses likes, dessas visualizações para o crescimento, e subscrições, claro, para o crescimento do canal crescer muitíssimo, pessoal, e ficar um canal cada vez maior, e uma qualidade também cada vez maior, pessoal. Conto com vocês sempre, do fundo do coração. Muito obrigado. Fiquem com os gameplays, fiquem com as estrelas e, como eu digo, fui, pessoal. Obrigado, pessoal.
A relic of the old world. Ready your men, Captain. We will only get one chance. And remember, when you hear the whispers, call for help. Do not attack.
When you hear the whispers, what do you think he was on about?
It's Dorman, right?
Yeah?
Then Dorman. Shut your damn mouth. Why do I always get stuck with these rookies?
Hey, the kid's got a mean cleave. Give him a chance.
Quiet.
Sullen!
A mean cleave, eh, Captain? Rookie can't even lift his own sword. Captain Oren? Captain? It's here. Rain! Send the signal!
What the fuck?
Rain! On my back, Rookie! Blade up!
Come on! I'm ready! I'm ready! It's a man!
No, it's not.
Run! Captain! Captain!
Stop! Humanity isn't ready. On your feet, lad.
Sir, the captain,
You'll be fine. Here.
What is it?
Get the body.
Stop. Mortal. It can still be contained. You don't know what you have unleashed.
Your kind no longer control this world. We cannot destroy your body, it's true. But you will watch as we destroy everything you have built. Bind him! Feed. Grow, my child. I'll make sure you can eat your fill.
My son, are you clear of mind and stout of heart?
I am.
Are you ready to sacrifice? Sacrifice everything to become the savior?
I will.
Do you have the strength to sweep aside this world and build it anew?
I must.
Now, are you ready to fulfill your destiny?
Existence is a thing of beauty, precious, but impermanent. Life and death are mortal enemies, and yet bound to one another. The continuation of life must be protected at all costs. Some have said, my methods are brutal. To this, I say, there can be no salvation without sacrifice.
We are faced with the end, and I will do what I must. Those who obsess with death, let them soon be acquainted with it.
Take, so long as the pay's good and a crossbow can solve it. I'll take 'em all down, one bolt at a time.
When thinking about each new class, we really try to think about how we can make combat feel different from all the others. For the mercenary, that difference is the crossbow. A crossbow is fundamentally different than a regular bow because it fires instantly instead of needing to be drawn back. This means that you need immediate feedback. Clicking the fire button should make the character shoot instantly, just like in a shooter. As soon as we experienced that, we realized that there are a lot of design lessons to learn from shooters, and so we fully embraced them. In Path of Exile 2, we have crossbows that work like sniper rifles, shotguns, and assault rifles. But in order to really get shooter-like gameplay, we wanted to go further. In Path of Exile 2, we now support WASD movement. You can now walk around in any direction independent of aiming. In fact, if this is your preferred method of gameplay, you can use it on any class, regardless of what weapon type you're using. You can change between click to move or WASD at any time. You can only hold 2 crossbows at a time, but Path of Exile 2 is all about interesting combinations of abilities, and this is where ammo skills come in. This is a burst shot crossbow, and right now I have armor piercing ammo equipped, which makes it very effective when facing a group of enemies, since it pierces right through them.
Bloody horrors!
But there are other ammos too. For a bigger single target, it might be a good idea to switch to incendiary. The more projectiles hit the target, the stronger the ignite, so you'll want to get up nice, close and personal with this one. If you have a bunch of targets running at you, you might want to slow them down. In this case, you could switch to permafrost burst shot. Shooting a bunch of smaller enemies at range will chill them, and potentially even freeze them in place. Once you have some frozen enemies though, you can switch back to armor piercing. Shooting a frozen enemy with armor piercing burst shot will explode the ice, doing a huge amount of damage to all nearby enemies. Another feature crossbows have is attachments. This is a grenade launcher. As you can see, when I equip it, it appears on the underside of the crossbow. These attachments are just like skill gems, so you effectively get extra skill slots, and you can augment these with support gems, just like regular skills.
Fire in the hole!
These grenades take a while to explode, so it's a good idea to pair them with some kind of crowd control, like permafrost burst shot. We have other grenades too though. This attachment is a flash grenade. It does barely any damage, but it does a huge amount of stun. It can be a great opener before you run into combat.
Surprise!
Now here's another attachment, an oil grenade. Firing one of these grenades coats the ground and nearby enemies in oil. Oil slows enemies down, so it's another useful crowd control mechanic. Now, another thing that oil can do is be set on fire. Any burning enemy or explosion will ignite the oil, causing extra burning damage. One of the problems with burst shot crossbows is that each pellet doesn't do much damage individually. This means that if enemies have armor, then it will be very effective preventing that damage. But thankfully, you can equip an additional crossbow in your second weapon set to deal with the weaknesses of your primary weapon. This is a rapid shot crossbow. Rapid shot is great for closing on enemies because you can shoot while running. In Path of Exile 2, we now have the ability to allow you to use some skills while moving. Being able to create skills like this opens up a lot of new design space and allows us to really increase the pace of combat. The armor-piercing version of Rapid Shot slowly erodes a monster's armor. Once the armor is fully broken, you can easily switch back to Burst Shot to deal much more damage. Being able to run while shooting with Rapid Shot is also great for when you want to perform a fighting retreat.
Reload!
Using permafrost ammo with Rapid Shot is also useful if you need to retreat. When you shoot the ground, it creates ice crystals. If you draw monsters back over these crystals, they explode, chilling the monsters. It's great if you want to set up a safe zone before pulling the next pack. Slowing enemies down can come in handy if you want to use the incendiary version of Rapid Shot. Using this skill requires that you charge up a little bit before it fires, but as it continues to heat up, it will do more and more damage. It has a really large clip size, so you can just keep firing and firing with it. But the other really useful feature is that when the crossbow is heated up, it adds extra fire damage to any grenade that you launch. Now I've been using explosive grenades here, but it will work equally as well with flash or oil grenades too. If you use it with oil grenades, the oil will catch fire immediately. Another crossbow type that you can find is Power Shot. This one works just like a classic sniper rifle. Use it with armor-piercing ammo and it will penetrate armor on targets, so it's a good idea to use when something's really tough.
Back down or die!
Now this skill has another interesting interaction with armor break. If an enemy has its armor broken, then your Power Shot hits a weak spot and does a huge amount of single target damage, with a bunch of extra stun for good measure.
Bullseye!
Now, the incendiary version of Power Shot is more like a rocket launcher. It does a big explosive blast at a distance. One of the really useful features of this version is that you can explode any grenades that happen to be on the ground. This combo also works really well with incendiary Rapid Shot. I'm going to charge up the heat on my crossbow, shoot out a bunch of grenades, and then start the fireworks with a Power Shot. The ice version of Power Shot creates frost walls at a distance. This is great for crowd controlling monsters in tight passages. The wall segments have other uses too. If they get destroyed by monsters, then they will explode, doing a small amount of damage. Now, remember that burst shot combo with frozen enemies we did earlier? That works with ice walls too. Let's put burst shot back on. Now I can fill up this area with ice walls, then shoot them with armor-piercing burst shot for a huge amount of damage. Alright, it's time to face the boss for this area. Let's see how we fare against her with all the skills I've shown you so far.
Shall take pleasure in your castration!
I'm not letting you anywhere near him.
Stay still, the mother!
No.
Oh, my dear child! Your time has come!
By the gods! Rapid fire!
Children! Eat your fill! Hard!
Eat this! Piercing shot!
What have you done? Come, my children!
Freeze!
Dismember!
What is going on in this god's-forsaken city?
And that's the Mercenary. It feels totally different than anything we've made before, and shows you the range of what's possible in Path of Exile 2. One of the 6 acts in PoE 2's campaign. We're starting here in the jungle depths. Act 3 is set in the ruins of the Vaal civilization, which fell thousands of years ago. Jungle has taken over their former once great cities, and we'll be exploring it using one of our 6 new character classes, called the Monk. In PoE 1, we had one character class for each of the combinations of strength, dexterity, and intelligence. When looking at the design of PoE 2, though, we realized that many of the new skills that we were trying to design just didn't really fit thematically with the existing classes that we have. Being a spellcaster with a bear form makes sense for Strength Int, but it doesn't really sound like something that a Templar would do. We realized that since we had new mechanics for every attribute combination, it actually made sense to design new character classes to explore the new themes. In PoE 2, every attribute combination has 2 classes associated with it. Strength Int has the Templar or the Druid, on Dexterity you have the Ranger or the more spare-focused Huntress, and on Dex Int you have the Shadow and the Monk, which Mark is playing here. Each class has its own 3 ascendancies that let you further specialize the class in the way that only that class has access to, but they both start at the same location in the passive tree. The quest rewards you're offered on the 2 variants are tailored to the class, but of course, this is PoE. You can still mix and match anything to your heart's content. Looks like we've come across the boss for this area. In PoE 2, every area of the campaign contains a boss of at least this difficulty. That's over 100 bosses to fight as you make your way through the campaign, and they all have unique mechanics to learn. As you've seen from watching Mark fighting, the melee combat in PoE 2 has a very different feel than before. We've done a lot of things to add mobility to combat. Practically every melee skill in PoE 2 has some kind of movement built into it. The Monk in particular is a melee fighter who specializes in mobility over brute strength. So, as Mark has been playing, you might have noticed these blue markers over enemies. Mark has a skill equipped called Killing Palm. Whenever an enemy has a blue indicator over it, it means that the monster has low enough life to cull with Killing Palm. Successfully executing the cull will give you a power charge. This is an important skill for the monk, since many of his skills interact with power charges. One of the great things about the skill is that it has a built-in dash forward, which makes it much easier to target the skill at the right point when you need it. We've done a lot of work in PoE 2 to make using skills like this feel satisfying. If you're accidentally targeting slightly off the monster, the skill will automatically lock on to the cullable target, and will even do a small amount of pathfinding around obstacles. We really want to make sure that when you've got an opportunity to use the skill, nothing is going to get in your way. Once you have some power charges, you need some skills to power up. A great follow-up is Falling Thunder. Falling Thunder without a power charge just creates a relatively small lightning AoE in front of you. But do it with some power charges and it turns into a pack clearer with a large number of extra projectiles. One thing you'll notice here is that like almost every melee skill in PoE 2, Falling Thunder has a bit of extra movement built in just in case you need it. Using the skill within range and you'll do a flip in place, but use it at a larger range and your character will move forward while executing it, getting you into position without any time penalty. In PoE 2 you also get a short period to redirect your target. Notice how you can start the skill facing one way, then whip the mouse sideways to land the skill in a different direction? In order to get power charges, you're going to first need to get some lower life monsters into a cullable range. You've got a few options. If you want to charge right in, Whirling Assault is a good option. It doesn't do much damage per hit, but it covers a lot of ground. And notice how you can turn as you do it? Generally speaking, you never lose control of your character in PoE 2. If you make a turn at the right time, you can get a couple of extra hits in on the monsters, getting them into range of your cull. Follow up with a Killing Palm, then finish off the rest of the pack with your Falling Thunder. We've now entered the Vaal Mechanarium. This is the place where the Vaal built the various constructs they relied on to power their civilization.
Now this is a find! A Vaal ruin that hasn't been looted? I wonder why nobody's been in here before.
One useful feature that we've added is the ability to call in NPCs to where you are, to give you more information, help you with quest objectives, and so that you don't have to always go back to town. In this case, we'll call in Alva to find out what to do.
This mechanism, if powered with a small soul core, it could open that door. There should definitely be soul cores somewhere around here. They had to power these constructs somehow.
As Alpha said, we need to find a soul core to open this door. Let's explore. If you want to shave off some life without getting too close to some of the more dangerous monsters, a good option is Wind Blast. Wind Blast also doesn't do too much damage, but it keeps the enemies back. The closer they are, the farther they're pushed back, so it's a great option for keeping smaller but high damage enemies at bay. Note that the bigger the enemy is, the less they'll be pushed back, so trying to push back some giants isn't going to be effective. And there's the soul core. Let's get back to the door.
Your fate is sealed.
Consider me impressed. I'll keep investigating in here. Bring me in if you find anything else.
If you need to defeat tougher enemies, it might be time to break out some of the ice skills in the monk's arsenal. Glacial Cascade creates a wave of ice that moves slowly in front of the player. It's pretty ineffective against fast-moving monsters because most of the damage occurs right at the end of the wave, and so a lot of monsters will just walk right by it. But if you can find a way to make a monster stop at just the right place, it can be very effective. In order to do that, you probably want to freeze monsters. The monk has a few different tools to do this. A fairly simple option is to get right in the monster's face with Ice Strike. Ice Strike doesn't do too much damage on the first 2 hits, but attack 3 times in sequence and you can get off a combo that has a much higher chance to freeze. Get in there with that freeze, then roll back and finish the job with a Glacial Cascade. Now, remember how Glacial Cascade had that extra damaging spike at the end? If you've hit a frozen enemy with that spike, it shatters the ice on the enemy and does a devastating amount of damage. Oh yeah, I just casually mentioned rolling back before. Did I forget to mention that in PoE 2 we added a dodge roll to every character? Just press spacebar at any time to roll. There's no cooldown, no limitations. It even has a bit of built-in pathfinding so you don't get stuck on things. When you dodge roll, you're not invulnerable. If something hits you, you're going to feel it, but most things will not hit you. That's because while rolling, projectiles and melee strikes will always miss. You'll have to roll out of the way of a slam that has AoE, but anyone swinging a sword or throwing a fireball is going to miss. Now, another really important function of the dodge roll is that it lets you cancel out of almost any skill at any time. This makes it so you don't feel like you're getting stuck doing a long animation when something is about to hit you. It really changes how skills with longer attack and cast times play, and it makes dodge roll feel like a very reliable way to avoid attacks. So, that's one way to get out of the way of damage, but the monk specializes in mobility, so it makes sense that he would have a few more. Wave of Frost is one of our new attacks with a retreat built right in. You move backwards and throw out a cold attack with a significant freeze. The great thing about this is it puts you at a good distance to follow up with Glacial Cascade and do a whole pile of damage. Hey look, another Soul Core. Another skill you can use to get some extra freeze is Shattering Palm. Shattering Palm is another palm strike that puts a small ice bomb on your target. Kill or deal enough damage to the target and the bomb will explode, doing some damage and a significant freeze. It's a great option against bosses where the wave of ice might not be enough to get that freeze off, but you really want to get that Glacial Cascade damage bonus.
Get back!
Face your demise.
The final skill we're going to show you today is Flicker Strike. It's a monk skill now, and another skill that consumes power charges. If you've played PoE 1, you know what to expect. It's a great finisher for tough boss fights, and it looks pretty impressive too.
Face your demise.
Another door. I wonder what could be in there. In order to take down this boss, we're going to need all the tools in the monk's arsenal, especially the combo of Freeze and Glacial Cascade. If you're a PoE 1 player, you might think that you can't really rely on Freeze because there's so many bosses that are immune to it, but in PoE 2 that's changing significantly. In PoE 1, Freeze is a binary mechanic. An attack freezes the target, or it doesn't. What this basically means is that in PoE 1, we were forced to add freeze immunity to many bosses, because freeze just trivialized them. Because of that, freezing was something you only really used while pack clearing, and not something you could rely on as a core part of your build for boss fight. In PoE 2 though, all crowd control mechanics now have internal meters that allow you to build up to a freeze or stun, or whatever other CC mechanic you might be using. It's a little bit like poise from games like Elden Ring, though the meters tend to be a lot smaller than those games. When you freeze an enemy, it increases the amount of freeze you need to do another freeze, but the increased difficulty bleeds away slowly. More freeze will always let you freeze the boss more often, but this system means it will not get out of control in party play or interact badly with other CC mechanics, allowing us to let these kinds of mechanics actually work against all bosses.
Taste flame. Taste
Blackjaw has dropped a consumable quest item, the Flame Core. It's a permanent +10 to Spirit. In PoE 2, we really want to make sure that you feel rewarded for exploration. It wouldn't be much good if we made all these awesome optional bosses if we didn't have something great to find for killing them. One of the things you might find for killing a boss is a permanent stat bonus to your character.
Your end comes. Your fate is sealed.
In order to help us with this next area, we're going to call in a sorceress. Mark's friend Octavian is going to send a friendvite, which we're going to accept, and then they can play together. The sorceress is the new intelligence-focused character in PoE 2. While the witch focuses more on occult magic and summoning, the sorceress is themed around pure elemental destruction. Let's have a look at how she plays.
All the vaunted technology of the Val, and look where it got them. Dead and buried.
This is the largest soul core I've ever seen. With this, we could power the canal systems. But it isn't charged. There is still latent energy in this machinarium from its ancient operation. These lines in the stonework should lead to generators. You might need to find some more soul cores to spin them up, but everything looks to be in surprisingly decent condition. Maybe the golems have been maintaining it. In any case, it should still function. We'll have to remove that large core from the wall, of course, but that shouldn't be a problem.
We have some skills here that you'll probably recognize if you've played PoE 1 before, but they feel a bit different to play now. Spark is great in these tight passages since it bounces around. We've added a Pierce support gem to really allow it to hit an entire room of targets. For a more single target focused skill, Arc is a good choice. It does more damage to the first target you hit. Now, if you find yourself surrounded, it might be good to use Ice Nova. It hits all enemies around you and slows them down with chill. Just be careful. Getting up close and personal isn't the ideal place for a sorceress to be. She doesn't have the defenses of a more melee-oriented character. If you want to help with the sorceress's weak melee defense though, you could use Arctic Armor. In PoE 2, Arctic Armor is a buff that builds up as you stand still. You can see the ice crystals forming around the character. They'll drop off if you walk. When monsters hit you, they take cold damage and build up to a freeze, so it's a great defense. Just be careful. You have to be standing still for a little while to get the full effect, so trying to stutter step isn't the best strategy. Now, Arctic Armor is an ongoing buff, but did you notice it didn't reserve any mana? How does that work? Well, we were pretty sick of the fact that in PoE 1 basically every character was playing with no mana pool, so we decided to change the way that reservation works. There's a new resource in PoE 2 called Spirit. Spirit is a dedicated resource you can use for ongoing effects like Arctic Armor, Heralds, Auras, or even Minions. Everyone starts with 100 Spirit, which is enough for most ongoing effects. But if you want more than one effect, you're going to need some more Spirit. Spirit is available on mods from items and on the passive tree. But if you're willing to give up your offhand slot, the easiest way to get it is by holding a scepter. Now, if you want to increase the cold damage you're dealing, you can use a Frost Bomb. It places a bomb on the ground that reduces the enemy's cold resistance while it's ticking down. It It's a great opportunity to use some cold skills before it explodes. And speaking of cold skills, a great skill to use on monsters with the slower cold resistance is Comet. This is a new skill in PoE 2, and it hits pretty damn hard. It costs a lot of mana and has a really long cast time, but it's worth the wait. It does a devastating amount of damage. To help get you out of danger, your character moves back slightly as it casts. It's pretty hard to hit a fast-moving opponent, but it's great on tougher enemies that stand still, or even a larger pack if you're further away and can predict where they're going to move. Now, if you run out of mana casting too many of those, I guess in an emergency you could cast your free-to-cast Fireball. Where did that come from, you ask? Well, this is a great opportunity to explain the way we've changed caster weapons in PoE 2. Now, in PoE 1, caster weapons had a default melee attack that nobody used, and because they had that, they also had a bunch of attack mods that would spawn in them that were useless to a caster. In PoE 2, we wanted to clean that up, so now each staff comes with a built-in free-to-cast spell. Just put it on and spam to your heart's content. Now, this particular staff is the base type that you get right on the starting beach, and it's quite likely that you're going to outgrow it, so that's why we have a lot of staves with more utility-focused powers for casters to use. Here we have a crystal staff. It's got a pretty cool built-in spell called Unleash. Using it slams your staff on the ground, and will allow you to triple cast whatever you cast with your next spell. Now, of course, you're probably going to want to use that with something powerful, and Comet is a great option. You'll notice that Unleash is one of the few skills in PoE 2 with a cooldown. In general, we really try to avoid using cooldowns because we really hate the feeling that combat is just waiting to be able to use your next skill. But it does make sense for Unleash since it's free to cast, and it's something we want you to be using situationally anyway. Now, if you're facing something tough, you might want to try out Mana Tempest. Mana Tempest creates a circle of power in which your character literally hovers over the ground. While in the circle, your mana drains, but it powers up all of your spells. Lightning projectiles fork, beams chain further, and you'll also do a lot more damage. So with all of these skills, here's a great combo to try. First, cast Frost Bomb to reduce the target's cold resistance. Then use Mana Tempest to increase your damage. Follow it with Unleash, and then triple cast the Comet to do a truly insane amount of damage.
I need more time.
This rare monster dropped an uncut gem. This is a good opportunity to talk about how skill gems drop in PoE 2. Instead of dropping specific gems, you can find uncut gems. Just right-click on them and pick whatever skill you want. The gem will come pre-leveled to the level of the area that dropped it, so it's a lot easier to change between skills in PoE 2. This time, I think it might be cool to grab one of our meta gems. Meta gems are skills that can have other skills socketed into them, changing how they work. In this case, we're going to select Cast on Shock. Now, let's equip this thing in the skill screen and choose a spell to trigger with it. I think Comet might be fun. Because Cast on Shock reserves Spirit, we'll need to first disable our Arctic armor. We have to decide if we'd rather have the extra defense or the extra offense of the Cast on Shock using our Spirit. In PoE 2, trigger gems use a system of filling up cast time on each trigger. Basically, if a skill has a short cast time, then we'll trigger it really often. If it's got a long cast time, like this Comet here, it will take a lot longer to trigger. You can see up the top left that there's a counter that says how far it is until your next trigger. And there you are. Using Cast on Shock, we'll automatically cast Comet whenever we're using our lightning skills. So we've found the generator. Time to power it up. Power is restored to the Mechanarium, all the constructs are coming back to life. We'll need to fight them on the way back to the charged Soul Core. One thing that PoE 1 players might have noticed is that this character has both ice and lightning spells. That's pretty inefficient, isn't it? It's a big no-no for most builds because any specialization into cold or lightning isn't going to affect the other element, and generic elemental damage increases are not going to be as powerful as focusing on a single element. Well, in PoE 2 we have another major new system to introduce to solve these kinds of problems, and it starts with weapon swap. Now in PoE 1, weapon swap isn't really used much for its originally intended use case. We imagined that people were going to be swapping in and out between different weapons to deal with whatever situation they were in. People just don't do that at all, and a large reason for that is because it's really awkward to do. In PoE 2 we wanted to solve that. The staff Octavian is using here has an ice mod on it that makes it great for when he's using his ice spells. We would also like to be able to make sure that the build works just as well for his lightning spells. If Octavian equips his previous staff in his second weapon set, you can see that it appears on the character's back. Now we're going to open up the skills screen. If Octavian opens up the skill options for his lightning skills, you can see here that you can choose which weapon sets are usable with each skill. First, we uncheck set 1 from being used by his lightning skills. Then, we go through the cold skills and turn those off with his lightning weapon. Now, when we use Spark, the character will automatically switch to the lightning staff on his back, and then use the skill. When Octavian uses Ice Nova, his character automatically switches over to his ice staff before using it. Figure each skill for which set to use, or both if you don't mind which. There's a very short time penalty to switching, so it can be good to leave some skills on both sets if it doesn't matter which weapon set you're using. But we still have the problem of passives. Wouldn't it be nice if we could specialize in both cold and lightning passives on the character? Well, in PoE 2 you can. We're on the passive skill screen here, and you can see that we're close to both a cold and a lightning cluster. At the top right of the screen, you can see where we have some weapon set specific points to allocate. If Octavian holds shift, he can allocate set 1 to the cold passives, and then allocate set 2 to the lightning passives. Now check this out. As we weapon swap, our passive tree changes from one build to the other automatically. Whenever we cast the appropriate spell, the character's passives reconfigure on the fly to the correct build for that spell. Now you can't do this with every passive on your tree. Only points granted from skill books will allow this kind of dual specialization, so you can't change from a mace-slamming warrior into a fire elementalist with the press of a button, but it certainly increases the number of options you have for builds. There's a huge number of places where the system can shine. You could augment your Dagger Shadow build with traps, or have a great curse setup on your Witch in one spec and then move to your Chaos Debuff spells with the other. It really opens up your options.
I need more time.
Another fun metagem to try out is called Barrier Invocation. This works a little bit like the trigger gem I talked about before, but this one charges up as your energy shield is hit by monsters. I think we might like to put an Ice Nova in this one. The more energy shield you lose, the more charge builds up until the point where you're able to cast the skill you socketed instantly. Lose some energy shield, and then at just the right time invoke Ice Nova to cast all the stacked up versions in one cast. If you keep losing shield, you'll build up even more charge for even more casts, so it's a great defensive option in an emergency. Here we are, back at the charged Soul Core. All we have to do now is take it. How hard could that be?
Oh dear. Now we just have to remove it from that construct. I'll, give that to you.
Get back!
So that's Path of Exile 2. Your next question is likely to be, when is the beta? Well, we're in our last year of development, finishing acts, adding skills, and balancing everything. The closed beta will start on June 7th, 2024. Path of Exile 2 has been a long time coming, and we're incredibly excited to be near the finish line, but we're not quite there yet. We are determined not to rush this and make sure that we get it right. Thanks for watching.